Recently, I posted a video that tried to explain what it was like, or what it is like, to be a man to women, so that perhaps they could develop some sense of understanding and empathy for what a male experience in life is like. Well, unfortunately, that video was not as well received as I had hoped. And I think the reason why is there is a general lack of, I don't know, maybe empathy is the right word, but definitely a lack of understanding for the whole experience. So to compensate for that, today I have an idea. What if the roles were reversed? What if women actually got what they wanted? What if they actually were treated by society just like men? What would that look like? How would that feel? So today we're going to do a little thought experiment. We're going to see what that might be like. Let's talk about it. So let's imagine a world where suddenly women find themselves being just as disposable as men. And that means that they need to sign up for the draft, they need to do the selective service registration, which is just sort of the first indication that you're not in full control of your life and that you have a greater service that you need to provide to our nation and our society. The second thing is, if you do go into the military, you're not going to get the option to opt out of combat. You're going to lose that ability. You'll have to be directed to combat as needed. The third thing you'll recognize is that in jobs where there are very high risks, you're going to experience a very high rate of mortality. Now imagine a world where 5,000 women are dying on the job every single year. How would our society respond to that? How would other women respond to that? I am just guessing that we would probably see investigations into it. There'd be new public policy. There would be safety regulations enacted. There'd be an entire, series of mountains moved to make sure that women were not unnecessarily put at risk and that their safety was prioritized above all other things. While today, men lose their jobs at a very high rate in jobs that have fairly poor safety records, and very little is done to prevent those deaths from happening. And the reason is that profits are more valuable than lives. Bottom line, men's lives are disposable. People don't come out complaining. These big companies, they will file, they'll pay out death benefits, and they'll protect themselves in court. It's much better to defend yourself in court than it is to have to invest a lot of money into creating a safer work environment for men. But I think that women might actually get something done. I think that they complain enough and they would cry about it, and we'd probably get 60 Minutes involved, and we would see a change to that. As long as we're talking about mortality, we might as well talk about death as a whole. Currently, men die about 5 or 6 years before most women do. Imagine if that was flipped around on its head. If women were dying 5 or 6 years before men, oh my gosh, can you imagine what would happen in our society? There would be investigations into the whole medical industry to find out what they were doing. Obviously, there's some kind of discrimination occurring here. These poor women are not receiving the care that they need. The drug companies are obviously complicit in this as well. There's a conspiracy at foot. There's no question about it. It's a patriarchy thing, obviously. It's got to be men's fault. These poor women are just dying 5 or 6 years younger. How on earth could this possibly be? There would be such outrage in our society if that were the case. But with men dying 5 or 6 years earlier, no one really seems to care. They think, well, these guys take a lot of risks. They work those heavy jobs. They die in the military. There's all kinds of reasons why men die early, but there's no reason for women to die early. Now let's talk about the legal system. This is one of my favorites. Imagine if women were being sentenced the same way that men are. Or worse yet, imagine that women's sentences were 60% longer than men's sentences for committing the same crime. Imagine how that would fly at the National Organization of Women. Oh my God, they would be losing their minds. Can you imagine the newspaper articles, the TV specials dedicated to this, the corruption involved in the legal system that would take two people who commit exactly the same crime, and now these women are going to be sentenced to 60% more time just because they're women. Holy shit. Holy shit. Can you imagine? Oh my God. Somebody call 60 Minutes on this one. Let's get The View on this one. Man, you can imagine those ladies on The View. They would be just about to lose their minds on this. And then, making matters worse, I mean, insult to injury, these poor women, if they go into family court or civil court, and just because their marriage didn't work out, even though they dedicated their entire lives to this marriage, financially, physically, emotionally, psychologically, and for whatever reason, they just can't make their partner happy, the judge is going to determine that their partner should get custody of the children 80% of the time. And if you guys have been married for at least 10 years, there's a very good chance that you're going to have to pay him alimony for the rest of his life. Even though he's moved in with his girlfriend, yeah, you're still going to have to pay. Nothing you can do about it. Oh my God. Can you imagine how that would fly? There is no way on earth in the United States of America that women would allow that to happen. Yet that happens to men all the time. Now, I'm laughing here a little bit because obviously this is ridiculous, but this is what's actually happening to men. Okay, this is actually what's happening to men. I'm just flipping it on his head and saying, now, what if this were to happen to women? How would they react? Well, they would be complaining. They'd be complaining a lot. They'd be screaming and crying in the streets. There'd be signs, there'd be marches. Oh my God, everybody would have little pink hats. It would be terrible. It'd be terrible. You know, there's just no end to it. So I think what I'm trying to tell you guys is that maybe we need to be a little bit more like these fictional women in my head who would burn down the entire country if they were losing custody of their children 80% of the time. You know what I mean? Just as a thought. But yeah, there's no way they'd be putting up with that. There would be blood in the streets before that would happen. So try to imagine, if you will, that women were going to college at a rate of about 20%, 20 points less than men. So for every 100 men to go to college, only 80 women were getting in or going to college. Now, we've seen how that works. We got Title IX from that. And that made it possible for women to go to college at a much, much higher rate. But now that we're seeing that happen to men, no one's doing any kind of investigating into that. You know, it was found that the system was sort of stacked against women back in the old days. So that's why they got to get Title IX and all these special considerations and, you know, opportunities to go to college that didn't exist before. And they were pushed, you know, socially and educationally and given scholarships and all kinds of paths to get into school. Well, now that men are getting in at a much lower rate and their educational outcomes are much, much lower, no one's doing anything about it. So, and I know a lot of you guys say, well, you don't need to go to college anyway, da-da-da-da-da. Well, you know, you can say that. And I certainly, you know, see that there's certainly lots of ways for people to make a lot of money in this world. But I'll tell you, there's no question about it. A man with a college degree is going to go a lot further than a man without one most of the time. Now, yeah, you can start your own business. You can be an electrician, a plumber, all that stuff. But you get a college degree and you're guaranteed a job, especially in certain fields. You're going to be a lawyer, a doctor, you know, you're a specialist in something, an engineer, an architect, any of those fields that have a lot of specialization in it. Yeah, you're going to make a fortune in your lifetime. And it's guaranteed. And you can take that job just about anywhere and be successful with it. So, yeah, you can definitely do it the other way. You can go the blue collar route, and I'm not knocking that in any way, shape, or form. Not in any way, shape, or form. But there's something going on here. When boys are not graduating from high school at the same rate, and they're not going to college at the same rate, and even those who do go to college are dropping out at high rates, and they're not getting degrees. This is not a good thing. It's not a good thing at all. Education, not just for job's sake, but just for being a citizen and just understanding the way the world works and just having critical thinking ability is critical. It's critical. And knowing that there is a majority of women by 20 percentage points that are going to have those skills and men are not is very, very, very concerning to me for our future. Just saying. All right, let's talk about psychological stress and social isolation, because these are things that men experience at a very high rate. Now, if women were experiencing these things and seeing the same kinds of outcomes, and what I mean is a lot of suicides and homelessness, that would be a social revolution kind of stuff. If women were killing themselves, it made up 75 to 80% of all the suicides in America. That would be a real problem. There would be Health and Human Services and all these other organizations, these executive agencies investigating into this to find out what on earth is going on. They would have entire university, research teams trying to figure out how on earth this could be happening. Why is it our women are killing themselves at such a high rate, and why are they ending up homeless 80% of the time? Why is it 80% of our homeless are women? You can just imagine how that would go over. There is no way they would let this happen. But because it's happening to men who are inherently disposable to the society, nobody gives a fuck. Okay? Nobody gives a fuck, except for other men. So now maybe it's time for us to start doing something about it. Maybe it's time for us to start raising our voices. Because men are not going to speak up for themselves. Men just don't. But maybe it's time somebody does, because this is unacceptable that the suicide rate for men is 4 times what it is for women, and the homeless rate for men is over 4 times what it is for women. That's just wrong. So imagine for a minute that most, like 80 to 90% of all of the violent crime in America was pointed at women, that women were the victims of these crimes. And they were 85 to 90% of the murder victims. Imagine that. Already we get tons and tons of information about violence against women, like it's rampant, like it's a pandemic of violence against women. It's not. Here in the United States, the epidemic, I should say, is violence against men. And men make up the vast majority of the victims of violent crime, especially when it comes to murder. Nobody talks about that. When it happens to a man, nobody really seems to care. It won't even make the news. If a woman gets raped and murdered in your town, I guarantee you it's making the evening news that night. And everyone's going to be on the lookout for whoever this perpetrator is. Everyone's going to be trying to track this guy down. But if a guy, is out jogging and he gets knocked over the head and mugged and dies as a result of it, I doubt you're going to hear anything about it. I would imagine that will just go unnoticed. The family members will know, and it'll show up in the police reports, but it's very unlikely that anyone's going to make any news out of that, unless that guy happens to be really important. If he's just some guy, it's not going to make anybody's news. If it's the mayor or the senator or someone like that, maybe you get it, but the rest of us, we're not making the news. Imagine if almost every romantic comedy or every comedy sitcom that was on TV portrayed the women as complete idiots, incapable of doing anything right, from parenting to running a job to a household, making dinner. They just can't do anything right. They're just complete morons. They're all about Duff beer and donuts and and they're all just fat and stupid. Imagine if media were portraying women like that. How do you think that would fly? You think people would go for that? I just don't think so. I think there would be lawsuits against media companies. There'd be walkouts on studios. The Screen Actors guild would get together and raise a big stink about it. Yeah, so, but for men, it's totally okay. Like, you can totally dog on a man anytime you want, and it's not a big deal. But if the script was switched and it was the woman who was the one who was being picked on, society wouldn't put up with it. So why are we putting up with this? Imagine if women had the same social expectations that are placed on men now. That there's sort of that man up kind of attitude when things go sideways or there's a problem. Rather than whining and complaining about it, you just gotta suck it up and get things done and fix things and make things right. Imagine if we dealt with women in that way. How do you think they would respond? There'd be a lot of crying, a lot of fighting, a lot of bitching about it. But I don't think that would fly very well. There would probably be some kind of lawsuits about discrimination, be women suing their brothers and their fathers, for saying that to them. I remember as a kid, being told that I had to mow the lawn, and it was miserably hot outside, and I had allergies, and I didn't want to do it. And I was trying to think of every excuse not to do it. Yeah, I was like, no, this is what you agreed to do. You're just going to do it. Now just go outside and do it. Take breaks if you need to, but you'll get through it. Yeah, we don't treat women like that. We give them a slack. We give them lots of slack. And we let them off the hook all the time. If they were treated like men, they would fight back, and they would fight back hard. Now, unfortunately, if we treated them like men, and we expected them to act like men, society would probably collapse. I mean, quite honestly, we wouldn't get the outcomes that we were looking for, but it would be very interesting to see. So, as you can see in my mythical little world where women end up having the same treatment as men have in society, it probably wouldn't work out. Women just fight back too hard, They just fight back too hard, and we just all give in to them. They wouldn't put up with it. Society wouldn't put up with it. There'd be investigations, there would be accusations, there'd be lawsuits. People would probably go to jail. Anyway, you guys, I thought it would be a funny look at what could possibly be, and maybe, even though this is kind of satirical and a little bit tongue-in-cheek, give some people a little bit of insight into what it'd be like on the other side. Maybe for you women who watch, you get a sense for what it might be like to be a man. And for you guys that are watching, maybe give you some ideas that maybe we shouldn't be putting up with all this shit. Maybe we should be pushing back a little bit harder. Maybe we should be standing up for our boys a little bit harder. You know what I mean? I mean, just walking away is one thing, but doesn't fix anything. And I don't know, I'm being somebody with kids and grandkids, I hate to see the whole thing fall apart, All right, that's all I got for you. I certainly hope you've enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe. And I love reading your comments, so please make sure to leave plenty of comments. And as you know, stay healthy, and if you can, stay single.